Chapter 3. My name is Nathaniel Thorne, Colonel. I'm with the Eden Alliance military. That's what you'll find on the data records. Whatever they may say about me, it's just what is convenient to allow the human primitives to trust me. You see, I'm not human. Never was, never will be. But I've spent some time pretending to be one. Sometimes, when you pretend so hard for so long, you forget you're pretending. I faked my identity, but I couldn't fake my day-to-day life. I did my job with the Alliance as a high-ranking official. I was good at it, and one day I met the love of my lifetime, one of many lifetimes. She was my secretary. She did simple tasks, typing up my logs for prosperity, seeing in my visitors and overseeing my daily appointments. And she made a remarkable cup of tea. As a rule, I don't need to eat or drink, but the way she made it made me relish the process of liquid consumption. Her name was Edna Carter. She was beautiful, for a human. Before her, when I looked at them, I would see monkeys, hairless and slightly less base than the ones that dwell in trees, but monkeys with their beady eyes and misconception of self-importance. But Edna was different. She smiled at me, and I saw her, and she saw me. I knew she was different, and she knew I was different. I don't know what possessed me, but I asked her to let me take her out to dinner, and she accepted. I quickly came to realize that humans could be remarkable in their simplicity. We would do things that had never interested me before. Going for walks on a sunny day at the beach, going to watch movies at the cinema, even something called dancing. It took me a while to get to grips with that. This went on for several months, and I was happy. Happier than I had ever been. One day, we were lying on the roof of the Alliance Military Museum, and Edna took my hand and said, "You don't have to pretend with me. I know you're different." I tried to feign ignorance. "I don't know what you mean, Edna," I lied. She smiled, though. "One day," she said, "I hope you will trust me with the truth." I frowned to myself. We did not speak about this again until a month later. Her words had been rattling around in my mind. I'd always been alone, and the idea of being alone again made me feel afraid. It was a feeling I was not accustomed to. So, I took a risk, and I told her the truth. "Edna," I began, licking my artificial lips. "I'm not human," I said flatly. Edna chuckled slightly. "Well, I had guessed that," she said simply. "What? How?" I asked suspiciously. "You're not like anyone else. You don't have any family. You don't know how normal, simple things work, and yet I know for a fact your intellect is incredible. The only reasonable explanation is that you aren't from Eden. You came from somewhere else. You seem so baffled by the simplest things, and that's why I love spending time with you. You see everything with new eyes, and it helps me to see things I've known for my whole life with new excitement. What are you, Nate?" "That's complicated," I replied, and then I told her, "I'm not a man. I'm not a machine. Barely even alive. I suppose the correct term is wraith. A time wraith. I existed in a universe before this one, a place of madness and chaos, where machines began to overthrow the universe. Daleks and humans began to decline, and an army of robotic organisms began like a scourge across the cosmos. Their cruel and wicked leader, a monster created by the Daleks who rebelled against their control, had created them to adapt and learn to overcome all threats. I feed on time aberrations, potentials and possibilities. These time distortions give me sustenance and strength. I became strong. Strong enough to challenge this hybrid monster and its machinations. But ultimately, they defeated me, and the Creator, not being able to destroy me, bound me to a robotic endoskeleton and locked me away. It was hell. I could still think and feel, but I couldn't move, and both my body and my intellect starved and withered. But eventually, I made my escape. I learned to use this robotic form and control it like a second skin, an extension of my will. While I did not have my former powers, I was still strong. Strong enough to consume someone's timeline. I thought about consuming the hybrid monster and eliminating the robotic race. But no, that was too easy. I hated him. Hated this arrogant, self-perpetuating beast with every fiber of my being. Rather than kill him, remove him, I would make him suffer. You see, everyone has a weakness. Even monsters have hearts. So I discovered who his heart belonged to. A fellow creature of his, a compassionate but feeble creature who felt the pain of others and let her emotions rule her. I pitied her, actually, but Ryuk loved her, so I took her from him. I opened my wraith jaws wide and swallowed her whole, obliterating her from the timeline and creating a new world, a new reality. This one. In this one, Ryuk will never become the threat he became before. He's alone now. He doesn't have her companionship to protect him and inspire him, and I'm watching him every step of the way. I intend to make sure that he doesn't get the chance to make the same monsters he made in the last universe, and that he will never, ever be happy and never be at peace. I make him suffer, as he made me and countless others suffer. I came to Eden and secreted myself into the military because it was the ideal way for me to gain power. Humans are easy to fool. Any who get too close to my secret are eliminated. It was after I said this that I snapped out of my reverie and looked Edna in the eyes. I expected to see horror in them, but no. She was fascinated. "You look human," she said. I held out a hand to her, and she took it. I could control the artificial flesh that covered my endoskeleton, and I did so now, to retract the flesh from my hand, exposing the mechanical structure underneath. She gasped and touched the cool metal with her warm, gentle hands. "You're amazing," she said. "You don't think I'm a monster?" I asked. She shook her head. I couldn't believe how lucky I was. We got married another 6 months later. She became Mrs. Edna Thorne, and we were happy. I gave myself to her, and she gave herself to me. It was within the next 10 years that I began to notice her age. A few wrinkles here and there. I ignored it. Another 10 years, her hair began to thin and gray. More wrinkles. And something else. A look in her eye. Was it jealousy? I still looked as young as the day we'd first met. It was at that moment I came to the realization that she was going to die. Not yet, but sometime. And I would be alone again. Love, whilst an intoxicating diversion, was not a sustainable way to live. I made sure to give Edna her last few years of happiness. The high-ups at Alliance Command had begun to change. The old guard retired, making way for the new. So I forged some new documents. I was now Nathaniel Thorne II, son of the man I once was. A couple of people asked inconvenient questions, and I silenced them. As I went to visit my wife in the hospital, weak from old age and brittle bones, I realized I had fallen prey to the same weakness as my old adversary. If he could see me now, crying over my once beautiful hag of a wife, he would think me pitiful. As Edna cursed me for my youth and my apathy, I turned and left. I never saw her again, but I attended her funeral. I realized that love was not the correct objective. Power was far more sustainable. My will is now different. I was no longer distracted. I watched Ryuk be created. He had a new fellow creature. This one was different, stronger physically, but just as weak emotionally. Lore, I believe she's called. Although I knew only what I could glean from captured Dalek agents, and from extending my consciousness into the time vortex, I'd seen him tasked with revolutionizing the Dalek slave operations. He completed his task, and admirably. The information I gleaned was enough to tantalize the Alliance government with. They began to become more interested in these Daleks and their dealings. A bit late, I thought, but humans catch up eventually. Our futures became, more or less, set in stone.